Credential suspension for the channel's chief White House reporter. Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, on what's at stake for the president and the press.
CNN is taking action after the White House ban our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta.
CNN's contentious relationship with President Trump moved into court today. Its lawsuit came after the White House yanked the credentials of Acosta, who has a history of lecturing and confronting the president following this clash at a news conference.
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Excuse me. That's enough. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders called the suit more grandstanding from CNN, which she says has nearly 50 other credentialed staffers. After Acosta asked 2 questions, she said he physically refused to surrender a White House microphone to an intern so that other reporters might ask their questions, and that this wasn't the first time he acted inappropriately.
That's not appropriate.
Sanders didn't repeat the administration's highly disputed contention that Acosta had laid hands on the intern. The move cast CNN President Jeff Zucker, the former NBC chief who worked with Trump on The Apprentice, as a press champion. He says the First Amendment gives journalists the right to hold officials accountable and ask tough questions.
We're asking for emergency relief because every day that this pass has been revoked is a First Amendment violation, and it's irreparable harm in the words of the law.
The suit notes the president constantly criticizes the network.
CNN's fake news. I don't take questions. I don't take questions from CNN.
And once tweeted this wrestling video aimed at CNN. The White House Correspondents Association is backing CNN, but Acosta is a controversial figure, viewed by some colleagues as a showboat. And CNN's suit may convince many Trump backers that the network is part of the opposition.
Who's who involved with this lawsuit? CNN and its chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, filing a lawsuit in a D.C. district court today. And take a look here at who they named. President Trump, but it goes well beyond that as well. His chief of staff, John Kelly, the deputy White House chief of staff overseeing communications, Bill Shine, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, the United States Secret Service, and its director. This, of course, stems from the White House's decision to strip Acosta from accessing White House grounds after last week's press conference in which he questioned the president, at one point refusing to give up the microphone when approached by a White House intern. CNN and Acosta say the aforementioned have infringed upon his First and Fifth Amendment rights. They have also taken issue with the process. Here's a part of the lawsuit, quote, defendants did not provide plaintiffs an opportunity to be heard before revoking Acosta's press credentials, nor have they provided him any avenue to challenge or appeal the revocation of his credentials. Rather, defendants have stated that they do not plan to ever rescind the revocation of Acosta's credentials. Sanders issued a statement saying that CNN, in her words, is grandstanding and that they will fight this suit. It ends with the following, quote, the First Amendment is not served when a single reporter of more than 150 present attempts to monopolize the floor. If there is no check on this type of behavior, it impedes the ability of the president, the White House staff, and members of the media to conduct business. By the way, the White House Correspondents Association has backed CNN and Acosta. They end a statement by saying, quote, the president of the United States should not be in the business of arbitrarily picking the men and women who cover him. Representing CNN and Jim Acosta in this case, Shepard, is Ted Olson. He is a big-time lawyer here in Washington, D.C., known back for his Bush v. Gore fame.
I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's
I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
President, that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question. If I may.
After that fiery exchange last week, CNN is now suing President Trump and his administration, demanding that they reinstate Jim Acosta's White House press pass. The lawsuit alleges that Acosta and the network's constitutional rights are being violated by the ban. But the White House is fighting back by dismissing the legal move as, quote, more grandstanding from CNN, and vows to fight it. You know what I learned from the lawsuit, Greg? That Jim Acosta's first name is Abilio.
Oh, that's nice.
I had no idea.
That is nice.
He's going by his middle name, Jim.
And I'm glad that you didn't butcher it. because apparently he butchered every name in the last block. Look, they might have Camila Gillibrand. Here's the issue with Acosta. They might have a point, even though he still has a daily pass he can apply for every day. CNN has 50 passes. But he may have a point. The problem is you don't care if they have a point because he's so unlikable. He's the student in class that disrupts the class so nobody else can learn. And Trump is basically the teacher that just grounded him or said you got to eat, you got to bash the erasers during recess. And nobody, and like, you got to go, well, maybe you want to be sympathetic to Acosta, but you can't because all he does is make it about himself. Every time he asks a question to Trump, will you agree with me that you're a racist? And it's just like, yeah, so they might have a point, but the point is we don't care because we don't like him.
Should Trump just give him the hairy eyeball like he gave the Moroccan king?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just stare him down and give him the silent treatment?
No, I think a wonderful thing to do would be to have the two of them sit at a desk and really go after each other. I think it would be incredibly compelling, and it could be an airing of the grievances that everyone would appreciate. And I think the president, I actually think they both get so much from these exchanges.
Yeah.
I think those who lose out, first of all, the American people, because when he is grandstanding, no one is holding the administration accountable. And also all of the other journalists in the room get very annoyed because they do research, they have questions, they have follow questions, they spend a lot of time crafting questions so they can ask 6 things within a question. And then when Acosta sucks all the oxygen out of the room, they want to take him and have a secret prison blanket party, I think.
Yeah, we're hearing no one likes him over at CNN as well. Juan, so Jim Acosta has yelled things during the White House Easter egg roll. He's yelled things during historic signing statements with Kim Jong-un. He's called the president of the United States on CNN racist, and he's, refusing to pass the microphone to this White House intern. At what point do you say, listen, shape up? I mean, how long do they have to put up with this? The White House would never put up with any behavior like that if it was Barack Obama in the Oval.
Have you ever heard of Sam Donaldson talk about a White House correspondent that grandstands regularly?
Did he call President Reagan racist?
No,
Did
but
he yell things during the White House Easter egg roll?
I think half the American people think President Trump is racist, so I don't know that that's so out of the blue.
But is that the job of a hard news White House correspondent?
No, he's asking questions, and
yeah,
I must say,
aren't you a racist? That's the question.
Believe me, there were reporters asking that last week, and the president said, "You're stupid, you're dumb, that's a racist question." But let's leave that alone because it gets so deep so quickly. I think it's interesting that Bob Woodward said that this suit is a mistake, that in fact what you see is CNN playing into Trump's hand. It just feeds the anger. They should instead cover him aggressively in terms of his action statements and policies. I will say that I think CNN's suit is on solid ground. You can't say because the guy's rude or because the guy asks tough questions that he can't be a correspondent at the White House.
So but he can still apply for the pass every day.
Can anybody be a correspondent? Right? If Don Lemon wanted to sit in the front row at the White House, could he get it? You're supposed to give it to just anybody?
I mean, I think the best thing they could do with Acosta is to ignore him. I mean, you revoke his access. He's dying to have it revoked, though, because then he gets to go around and tweet, my access has been denied, and he gets to become the story. I would stand up there and ignore him. It would drive him completely insane. Every person you know who's dying for attention, and his behavior is abysmal. I know it's hard to ignore, and I know you want to throw him out of the room because he detracts from the ability of other reporters to ask their questions, and he's ostentatious and he's annoying. I get it, but the second you revoke it and allow him to make himself the story, it's a gift to him. So I wouldn't have done this. I think the lawsuit may hold up, but you're right, though. Somebody has to be able to get his behavior in line. This guy can't just walk in there every day and act like he's in a political. It's like he's a contributor.
Are you suggesting a shock collar?
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
I don't think it worked for them though when they banned another CNN correspondent because they didn't like. It doesn't.
See,
this is bad. Though. This is like the video where they set out a doctored video as an official White House document. That's propaganda. That makes people think that what's going on in the White House is really an autocrat.
So if I worked for, let's say, Fox News, and I went into the White House, and every day during the press briefing, I played mouth trumpet, and it was really, really annoying for everyone in the room. Does the White House have a moral obligation to keep me in the room, although I'm annoying everyone in there going,
No, they have no obligation to keep you, but they don't have the right to throw you out. Remember, there have been people in fist fights. This is about protecting the president and his family. That's about it.
Okay.
Other than that,
so you can. So in Juan's opinion, you can go to the White House and you can behave like a total idiot, and they're constitutionally not allowed to touch you. All right? Next Democrat president, I'm applying for a hard pass. I'm going to misbehave and see how long.
By the way, he could still get a daily pass.
That's right.
Judge Napolitano is here. Answer that charge, please.
Well, this is a sweeping complaint filed by Ted Olson, usually associated with Republican causes in Washington, D.C. It's filed in federal court in Washington, D.C. It's not looking for money damages. It's looking for the immediate return of Jim Acosta's credentials. So they're arguing that he was punished because the president doesn't like his speech. That's the First Amendment argument. That his credentials were taken away without any notice to him or hearing. That's the Fifth Amendment argument. And then they quote the regulations. I'm smiling because you and I talked about this in the past, or during the break, in which you said what I think a lot of Americans agree with you on, that there should be a certain level of decorum in the White House press corps, and the failure to comply with that decorum should be grounds for revoking the pass. The only grounds for revoking the pass is the person a danger to the physical security of the president or his family. And obviously, Acosta may have been an irritant to the president, but it was hardly a danger to him. So I think CNN's got a very good case. I think this will be resolved quickly. I don't expect a jury trial. I think it'll either be settled or CNN will prevail on motion. Now, the president is a defendant. General Kelly is a defendant. Bill Shine is a defendant. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a defendant. The head of the Secret Service is a defendant. And the particular Secret Service agent, they didn't know his name at the time they filed this, so they called him John Doe. He's the defendant as well.
So just so I would imagine they'll change the rules.
The complaint is filled with Madisonian language that I love about the value of a free press to help Americans make free choices in the electoral process.
Yeah, but not the freedom to make a circus out of something. Hold on a second, Judge. As I understand it, Ash, Randall Stevenson, head of AT&T,
chief executive of AT&T, who owns CNN.
What's he saying?
Very supportive of CNN, Jeff Zucker, and they say, look, he says CNN likes Jim Acosta's work. He says this is wrong. He says if the White House wants to pull someone's press credentials, there's a process. You didn't like the line of questioning, question mark? Well, that kind of seems to be violative of our protections of freedom of the press.
Mr. Stevenson is exactly correct, and that's part of the argument. They didn't follow the process. Believe it or not, Acosta would be entitled to a hearing, and they would have to show which rule did he violate. And the only rule that has anything to do with what he did is, was he a danger to the president or the president's family? Obviously not.
Well, apart from taking his credentials away, couldn't they have just said, you, out, you're not coming in?
Yeah, let me tell you what Dana Perino, our colleague, told me George W. did. If somebody acted in a way that the president felt was personally offensive, he didn't call on him for 2 or 3 days. And then things calmed down on him, and they went back to normal.
Yeah, but Acosta would never be quiet. I mean,
he'll just stand up.
He'd just stand up and keep talking. You know he would.
You know, it's part of the rough and tumble of the First Amendment.
Well, okay, but...
remember Jefferson.
I
would rather have newspapers without government than a government without newspapers. A bit hyperbolic, but you can understand the value of the free press of the founders. Those would be the people that fought the war against George III.
You're just trying to understand the value of Jim Acosta being rude to everybody, including the President of the United States. We're out of time. Guess what?
All right. So you're giving yourself the last word.
Yeah, I am, as usual.
Thank you. God bless you. And God bless America.